I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to the Secret Hidden Bunker in the Rocky Mountains and Dragon House Studios, and welcome to Triggered. No, wait, let me make a little correction there. Welcome to Triggered, brought to you by MidwayUSA. That to me is just a very exciting thing. Announcement we're making today is that MidwayUSA has taken over as the name sponsor for Triggered, from MBTV on the Radio podcast, and for the michaelbain.tv website. As you know, Larry Potterfield and I are very close friends. Midway has been a great supporter of my other projects on Outdoor Channel, and I'm proud to say they've stepped here today to come in as our name sponsor. So all of you, Larry, Jeff, Matt, everybody there in Columbia, thank you. And I have another announcement just before we get into the weeds on this scope. This is a Crimson Trace 3-24X. It was their Series 5, which is top of the line scope. And I happen to like it a lot. This is the second long-range Crimson Trace scope I've had. But the other announcement is Crimson Trace is doing something I consider absolutely amazing. And once again, to be fair, you know, their sponsors here. Crimson Trace sponsored, named sponsor, a shooting gallery for 15 years. I have a long, very, very good relationship with Crimson Trace. And this year, they're introducing, I think, 50 new pieces of optics, 50 new scopes. So many that I am, in the next few weeks, going to be going to Columbia, Missouri, where American Outdoor Brands, which Crimson Trace is part of, that's where their headquarters are, and I'm going to take you through these new products on video, one at a time, show you what's going on with Crimson Trace. All these things are very exciting to me. This is a great year already for Triggered. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and hey, thank you, because your watching is what allows us to do it. As I said, this scope, 3-24X Series 5, it fell between the old Crimson Trace scopes and this new release that we're going to be talking about. But I asked them for this scope for a couple of reasons. I had the first Crimson Trace long-range scope, and we talked about it. The scope was great. The glass was exceptional. The turrets were super. The reticle seemed more hunting for me, or seemed more of a hunting reticle for me, or for like a PRS on a ranging reticle, as opposed to what I needed as a 22 long rifle long range shooter. So we talked, and they said, try the 3-24. And I did. I got this scope, and we're going to be talking about sighting in and stuff like that in the next segment. But the reason that I like this scope for NRL 22 long range is, number one, it's short. That's really cool. It's under 14 inches. It's like 13.9 inches. When you get into the great big scopes, you get into, how you say it in English? Great big scopes. Great big scopes weigh a lot. This scope weighs 34.5, 35 ounces, which is substantially less than the Night Force that I've been using on my 1022 that I shot NRL with last year. Of course, this is Volquartsen Summit, straight pull bolt action. Now you can see how this scope sits really well on this package. Now I had actually considered using a different chassis. This is a McRee's chassis. We've talked about that. From Randy Luth, a Luth AR adjustable buttstock. I thought about putting this in another chassis to add weight, but what's happened is the weight of this scope, along with the weight of the Volquartsen Summit and the chassis, is just about perfect. You know, I think we're 12 pounds, 10, 11, 12 pounds, somewhere in there. It's perfect for what I want to do with it. Another reason I specifically wanted this scope, think of the magnification. Magnification is 3x to 24x. Now, when you are looking at a 22 NRL match, a 22 long-range match, you may see targets even closer than 25, but at least you're going to see them at 25. For those of you who love to dial that thing up to 24x, you know what? You will never find the 25-yard target. The time will run out while you're looking for the 25-yard target. Ask me how I know. So 3x is really good, and up to, say, 18x is what you're going to need in the match. But I like the 3 to 24. If I've got to reach out, if I'm going to be going 200, 250 yards, I've got that little more magnification. Now also the parallax adjustment on the left-hand side, some people call it the focus. Doesn't have anything to do with focus. It's the parallax adjustment, and it goes down to below 20 yards. Now once again, in an NRL 22 match, that's important. If your parallax only goes to 50 yards, then at 25 yards, what you see is a blurry target. 1/10 of a mil on each click, so you got, I think, 10 mils on per rotation, 25 mil total on it. So what you have here to me is an ideal 22 scope. It's an LR1 mil dot scope reticle, and I'd still like a slightly bigger dot. It's illuminated in the center dot, but it fixed some of the issues that I had with the previous reticle. And I've been out shooting it. I've been out doing a familiarization with the gun and the scope and the package. And we're going to talk about how well that worked out in our next segment. But first, this is a $2,000 piece of glass. However, if you go to MidwayUSA and look it up, Crimson Trace 3 to 24, Series 5, $8.99. You're a fool not to buy it. We'll be back in a second.
The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. It's true, you can't avoid the struggle. It's coming, but you can control your precision. It's time to put it all on the line, because with Crimson Trace Optics, failure is not an option.
Welcome back to Triggered, brought to you by MidwayUSA. Of course, go to michaelbain.tv. We got links for everything for you, as always. I had a really interesting range day with this, my first really serious range day with this, and it was in effect familiarization with the rifle and the scope combination, everything that goes with it. It's sitting on a medieval tripod here. This is part of the Overwatch package that I have. But I wanted to sight it in a way that I don't usually do. Normally, if I'm going to sight in a gun, sight especially a 22, I'm going to run a target out to 50 yards. I'm going to make sure it's on paper, and I'm going to shoot until I get a little bitty tiny group, and then I'm going to shoot a reference group. I didn't do that today, and there are several reasons why I didn't do that. The biggest one is the ammunition shortage. And kids, I am sorry to tell you, it is not going away. We have at least a year of this, and I suspect probably longer. Once again, people are making ammunition at a level that is breathtaking. There are also political rumors that foreign ammunition might come under some kind of restrictions, so that's got a lot of people spooked. I have excellent long-range 22 ammunition. SK, long-range rifle match, a Lapua, Midas Plus, but I don't have a lot of it. It's expensive. It was expensive before this started, and now it's gone. So I am in the same situation you are. I know that beginning in the spring, I'm going to be shooting competition with this combination. So I need to put the time in on the gun, but I don't want to sight it in for SK long-range rifle match and then shoot up what I have to get me through the season, if that makes sense to you. So I made a decision. I went to CCI Standard Velocity Target. It's a round that I've had good luck with, and I happen to have a lot of it. So I took it out to the range and said, let's see what we can do here. And so my first thing was I wanted to go at 25 yards. It's cold. It's a cold day on the range. It's a windy day on the range. But I said, let me sight at 25 yards, and I can work from that rather than sighting at 50. Probably what I will do before I begin competing with this gun is I'll sight it in at either 50 or 100. Very likely to sight it in at 100. Why? Because that's the hardest shot on an NRL match. 50, 75, 25, I can figure that out. But today I said, let's sight this in at 25 yards. What did I want? Really simple. At 25, if you do a 25-yard sight in for a 22 rifle, a 10-22, what you want is a single hole, or at the very least, every shot touching. That's what you want, and you want it in the center X. So I was lucky enough that with the CCI Standard Velocity, my first group is ragged, but it's still one hole. and I started moving it around. I started working around. Normally, I'd recite, shoot 3-shot, 5-shot groups, typically 5-shot groups. This time, I will confess to you, at 25 yards, you can get away with what I think of as walking the gun in. Fire shot, you're looking through the scope, saying, nah, nah, it looks like I need to click about 4. Nah, nah, that was about 1 too many. Nah, nah. So I'm going back, I'm going forth. I'm going back, I'm going forth. I'm going up, I'm going down. I'm adjusting the windage and the elevation at the same time, which you should never do. Normally what I would do is I would set the elevation first, then I would work on the windage. So I said, let me get this sighted in at 22, at 25 yards. First group's a little high and right. So I managed to work it down until I've got, I'm looking at my range notes here. These have not been transcribed into my dope book. Usually I'm the dope. But I start looking at them and say, okay, you know, I'm seeing what I want to see. I'm seeing all shots touching. I'm pulling it in. I'm starting to see, you know, the one-hole groups. So I got it X-centered, and then I did what I think of as a run-out. Is I started at 25 yards, shooting on the paper. 1 shot, 2 shots. Then I go to a 35-yard spinner and spin it. Then I go to a 40-yard know your limits plate. I want to shoot at least a 2-inch, 1.5-inch, 1-inch plates at 40. Then I go to a 60-yard spinner, then to a 75-yard spinner. And I'm doing fine because basically I'm doing a little holding. And what I didn't do well is I have a 100-yard 1-inch plate, and I skated right off the side of that. But I'm not worried about that today. So started at 25, went out to 100, and came back down exactly the same way. And at that point, I'm starting to get a feel for how this scope works. Now, some people will look at it and say, well, there's still a lot of information in the scope, you know, and there's still that tiny, tiny dot there. But let me tell you the truth. For match shooting, you need to be so focused on a very narrow part of that reticle. This is not like when I was at FTW a few weeks ago. This is not like really long-range shooting. This is NRL 22 inside 100 yards, and for the ultra-long range, at least here in Colorado, inside 250 yards, I know what I need to see in the scope, and this scope allows me to see it perfectly. So I'm getting familiar with it. I like it. Every so often, though, I would forget to do something. Go ahead and guess what I'd forget to do. Work the bolt. But, hey, it's a learning experience, and that's why I was on the range. When I come back, I want to answer one of your questions about a gun that you saw last week. This week's Triggered is brought to you by MidwayUSA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Taurus USA. Designed to protect. Rock Island Arms Corps. Solid as a rock. Volquartsen. Engineering the world's finest rimfire rifles, pistols, and parts. And Franklin Armory. Making some of the most innovative guns in America. Welcome back to Triggered, brought to you by MidwayUSA. And the question I'm going to answer is, last week I mentioned this gun. This is a Ruger Single 6. It's a custom version, shortened barrel, bird's head grip. And I said, it's a long story about how this got to be a custom gun. And several people sent me notes that said, hey, if it's a long, weird story, spill it. And I take some blame in this story. Years back, many years back, I'd had a large number of custom guns. I love custom single actions. I have several of them, as you know. Hamilton Bowen, oh gosh, Alpha Precision, a number of different top gunsmiths have done the work, Jiminy Custom. And another gun writer friend of mine, the late Dennis Prisby, he's a great guy, great writer, knows or knew a ton about these guns. One day on the Lee Martin Single Action Forum, he said, you know, we should both build a Ruger Single 6. And you know, we can see what we come up with. We won't tell each other what we're doing. We just build a Single 6. And so we set out to do, I said, I got Single 6s lying around. We'll do that. And literally the day I told Dennis that, Shooting Gallery was furloughed for a bit. Right in the middle of our 21-year run, we were actually furloughed for about 60 days. For 60 days, they were going, we don't know if we're going to go forward. And they did go forward in the end. But I was late in getting this gun out to have anything done to it. So Dennis had already gotten his gun built, And he told me, he said, well, you cost me a lot of money. I said, I'm still doing it. It's just taking me longer. And he goes, never mind. I wrote a big article about mine. So I made money off of it anyway. But I had this gun locally. At the time, I was living in lovely Nederland, Colorado, which is the center of the marijuana industry in the United States. It is also the home of the frozen dead guy, who is, in fact, a frozen dead guy. Who's on dry ice. He was on dry ice up the hill from my house. So if the ice melted, I mean, I had toxic issues. I urged the town council to put like a glass door on the crypt because everybody wants to see a frozen dead guy. In fact, they have a parade every year, the Frozen Dead Guy Parade. And my sweetie and I were actually in it because our friends had a microbrewery and we carried the microbrewery banner. And we got the best place in the parade, which is exactly 1 block long. We got right behind the alpacas and right in front of the bondage sluts riding on a hearse. Anyway, it's the mountains. But Mountain Gunsmith in Golden, Colorado, Paul, worked this gun out for me. We cut the barrel. I had a single 6. It had fixed sights on it, which works. So most of the single 6s you're going to find are going to have adjustable sights. But this one, I think it had 6-inch barrel and fixed sights. So what we did is we cut the barrel down to the length of the ejector rod. This particular ejector rod, you can tell that it's a what they call a bullseye ejector rod. You know, a bigger ejector rod, and it's kind of got that hole in the middle. Call it a bullseye ejector rod. So we cut the barrel to the length of the ejector rod. This particular grip frame, I believe I bought it from somewhere. You probably buy one at MidwayUSA, but if you look around, you can find bird's head grip frames from Ruger's, and that will fit a single 6. So I had been able to source a grip frame in bird's head. I gave that to the gunsmith, and I was able to source these faux ivory grips. Once again, I mean, the internet is a great thing. And he put this gun together and re-blued it into this really deep blue-black. And it's got a great trigger job on it. If you look at it, it's got a balance to it that I really like. You know, we showed you the Barkeep from Heritage Firearms. We also, if you go way, way back, we showed you the Lipsy's shopkeeper version of the Ruger Bearcat, which is a smaller frame gun. But I like this. I think, you know, single 6, it works absolutely perfectly. I like the bird's head grip with it. It is a really, really neat gun. That's the Cliff's Notes version of the story, how I ended up with a custom 22 Ruger single 6 that I never intended to have. But, you know, once I got it, I really liked it. You know, I really felt very strongly that it's got the dimension, it's got the lines, it's good to look at, and it reminds me of a fun time years ago. So hey, anything we talk about here, you know you can find the links on michaelbain.tv. And again, my profound thanks to MidwayUSA for stepping on board as our name sponsor. And thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to you guys for tuning in. See you next week.